Rube, I have a new favorite person. I've never met this gentleman, but you sent me a photo while you were sitting in traffic. And you're sitting. So, this is Eagle Eye Podcast. Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. I have to say that I'm going to get to what I want to talk about here, and we'll talk about football
Eventually.
at some point. But you were in traffic on your way here to the studio, presidential traffic, which is always a mess. So, you're like at a standstill on 95. Behind, I want to set the scene as well as I can. Behind an ice cream truck, a Mr. Softy truck. And you send me a photo of some guy who had walked out of his car, walked up to the window of the Mr. Softy to order ice cream in standstill traffic.
Yeah.
Sir, I salute you.
A couple other people went over and got their ice cream. I like how we can do that. Yeah, so traffic was great. It was a great morning. There was no traffic. My GPS was like 8 minutes to work. I was actually on 95 South, right? I was right across from the Fillmore. So that's where I was. I was that close. And I saw the two cops kind of doing the weaving thing in front of me, just like 10 cars in front of me, and then eventually just stop. And we sat there for 48 minutes and waited for the presidential motorcade to, I guess, come down from the convention center down Vine Street, eastbound and onto 95 South to the airport. And yeah, we didn't move. So ice cream truck, some enterprising people, and a couple other people were walking over. And then I saw some brake lights and everybody ran back to their cars.
How long did it? So it was a while before the guy, like, he wasn't like 2 minutes in, like, I better get a
No, it was
cone.
actually in the last 10 minutes. So we had been there about 35 minutes without moving when the guy finally was like, I got to get me some ice cream. So
what did he get?
I couldn't really tell what he got, Dave.
Because I'm telling, like, I was thinking about it, and if you're sitting in traffic, it's fine. You can eat an ice cream cone. That traffic starts to move. You're now on 95 eating an ice cream cone. It's pretty humid. That can become a dangerous situation.
You have some melting going on. It was something in a cup.
Okay, so that's better.
Yeah,
Or like so like a milkshake would work for that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to. But I think all the stuff they have in the trucks is frozen anyway, so it's not like they're giving you.
No, I mean, Mr. Softy, they've got the.
Was it a Mr. Softy?
It was a Mr. Softy. I know my.
Check my truck.
Trust me on that. I've got good sources.
It doesn't say Mr. Softy on it.
Oh, I could spot that truck from space.
I like this guy.
Yeah.
Look at this guy.
Yeah.
I think he should be an honorary Eagle Eye podcaster.
I like that. That's
Mr. Fun. Ice Cream Head Man.
Oh, it's Mr. Softy.
Okay. Anyway. There you go, leaning back, like Ben said. I'm going to stop doing that.
All right. Football.
But yeah, it was.
Want to go talk about football now?
I was glad I hadn't had like my giant 48-ounce iced tea before we got here.
Yeah. Presidential traffic is always. Yeah. It takes forever. It's always real rough.
Yeah. Let's see a segue from that to what's next.
Well, I mean, if there was any ice cream on the track where Devon Allen was running this weekend, it would have melted because. No. How fast do you think Devon Allen could run the hurdles with an ice cream cone in hand?
Anyway, yeah, we don't need a segue.
All right. Devon Allen was really fast this week.
Yeah, it was funny because I was watching the meet and I messaged you. I messaged you on Slack. I was like, Devon Allen's about to run Grant Holloway. If you're interested. Of course, I didn't hear anything from Dave.
I saw it. I was on the beach thinking.
Oh, you're on the beach?
All right.
Just shut up. Dave's saying, shut up, Rube, with your stupid track crap. And then he runs 1284. It was a great race, too. Grant Holloway, he's the world champion. He's Olympic silver medalist, world indoor record holder over the 60-meter highs. And so he's one of the greatest hurdlers, probably overall the greatest hurdler ever. And Aries Merritt set the world record of 1280, but Grant Holloway, he's 100th of a second off that. And it's going to get broken. So he's also the best starter ever. He gets out of the blocks, and he had a faster reaction time significantly than Devon Allen. And he looked like he was running away with the race. And then after the seventh hurdle, Devon Allen caught him at the seventh hurdle and just blew his doors off. And it was amazing. Third fastest time ever run behind Aries Merritt and Grant Holloway. He ran the 1281 Holloway did at the Olympic trials last year. And so this was at Randall's Island, Icon Stadium up in New York. And it's a world-class track. It's a fast track. It was good conditions. And, man, it was incredible. And, of course, here, this is like this is like my two universes meeting here. Like a Philadelphia Eagle running the third fastest time in the world. And yeah, it was cool. And, I think, does that translate? How does that translate? Because like people were like, oh, well, now I think he's going to make the team. Like he doesn't have any better chance of making the team at 1284 than I think his previous PR was 1299 in Belgium in April, just this past April. But it was certainly pretty cool to see. I mean, he's going to break the world record. And he talked to John Clark last week, and he revealed that he had COVID for 2 weeks. And he said after the race,
check out that Takeoff podcast. The whole thing was pretty cool.
It really is. And
it's the first time I've really heard from him.
Yeah, we haven't talked to him because he wasn't at OTAs because he was out with COVID. He was at rookie minicamp. I think it was the first few days of OTAs, but we weren't there. And yeah, he had COVID. He said he didn't train. He didn't get off his. He said he felt okay, but he was, he didn't test negative or he wasn't non-contagious until 4 days before the race. So he said, I guess it really helped going to OTAs and getting off my feet for 10 days. Tells you something about his fitness level. He's fast. I'm telling you, he is. I don't know what's going to happen. I still think he's a long shot to make the team. I think if he shows anything in training camp, I'm sure they'd want to keep him on the practice squad, but it also might change his priorities. How committed is he to football? If he's going to Europe, he's running 2 races in Europe before the U.S. Championships, which is in Eugene in a few weeks. And then the World Championships are in July in Eugene. If he breaks the world record, if he starts getting like a lot of money from sponsors and from meet promoters, maybe that'll change his priorities. But there's really no meets between like when training, like after the World Championships, there won't be any meets through the end of the football season. So then indoor starts. So it wouldn't seem to conflict as far as time training. I don't think so either, because obviously he's in pretty good shape. He might have to get a little stronger, a little bigger for football, but
that's what I was wondering. So he talked to Clarkey about, the training for the hurdles isn't much different than his training for football. It's all about explosion. And I mean, you think about it, and it's kind of true. He's saying like you have to explode for, X amount of yards before the first hurdle, and you're kind of doing the same thing in football before your breaks. But if he needs to get bigger, you would assume that it would eventually maybe take away from what he can do on the track. And if he's so close to breaking the world record, you'd wonder what that would do in his mind. Like, would he still be willing to go forward with both full time, basically?
Yeah, it's a great question. He said post race in the interview up there, he said, I'm after World Championships, it's all football for me for 7 months. So I would think that the changes in his body that he would have to make to go from one to the other are small enough that he could do it if he had the opportunity, if he shows that he can play football, which who knows? It's been 6 years. It's been 8 years since he was really, his freshman year. He caught like 700 yards.
Yeah, it was 2014 we're talking about.
Yeah, that's 8 years ago. 7 touchdowns, 41 catches, maybe 26 yards per kick return. So he's a legitimate football player, but it's been a long time. Physically, I just don't think that would be the problem. I think it's a matter of just trying to play at a high level after not having played the game for so long.
It's exciting. I mean, I know everyone's going to be watching him at training camp and kind of dissecting his every move. And I'm with you. And we saw the negativity this weekend. Oh, are you going to drop the football? Maybe.
Yeah. So what?
Maybe. But I mean, I appreciate the Eagles trying. He's taking up one of 90 roster spots. So it's not like it's some circus. I mean, the guy's a legitimate football player. And you see what he has. And if it doesn't work, you didn't lose anything. You lost, $40,000 guaranteed, what his contract has in it. So, that's a lot of money for us. It's not a lot of money for the Eagles. And
it's not that much money for you.
Yeah, so it's I'm really fascinated. I really wanted to watch him at OTAs, and he wasn't there because of COVID. So I'm looking forward to seeing him at camp, and we'll get a better sense too because he'll have the pads on, and I think it takes a different skill in a way to be fast and control your speed when with pads on, with guys covering you, than it is on a track when you're really racing against yourself. So
Sure.
we'll see all that. I'm excited though. I'm with you. I still think it's probably a long shot that he makes the team, and he is 27 too. So it's like, it can't be this long drawn out plan to make him a football player. It kind of has to be relatively soon, but who cares? Let's have some fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if he's on the practice squad, he's on the practice squad, and it's worth a shot.
And the way the practice squad is now with the call-ups,
yeah,
I mean, it used to be like the practice squad wasn't going to play. They were really just developmental players. But in the last couple seasons, the role of the practice squad has really changed, because it's almost like an extra roster. It
really is.
It's like you can kind of store guys there and then bring them up as you need them for situations. So that's the interesting part of it. It used to be the practice squad. You were just on the practice squad and you're not going to play unless they signed you to the active roster. But now with these elevations, that whole thing's different.
Yeah. A lot of people on Twitter was a mess after this.
What's new?
It was like, oh, this is just Jeremy Bloom all over again. Maybe it is. Jeremy Bloom was a skier. He didn't run.
Yeah, but if they got some snow,
he would have been great in that Lions game, right?
Yeah. I mean, he would have. Shady thought Shady was gone fast.
Been great in that Seattle game, that Monday night game in the snow when they retired Reggie's number. But Jeremy Bloom was, and he was a draft pick as well. I mean, it was just and Jeremy's a great guy, and I'm in touch, keep in touch with him, and he's done incredible, unbelievable charity work with his foundation. But he wasn't a football player. I mean, he had been a returner at Colorado, a few years earlier, but his whole body was the body of a skier, and he couldn't run, and that was the problem. You can't really play football if you can't run. I think we know that Devon Allen can run, as fast as anybody. So that's not a good comparison. Jeremy Bloom was and look, they didn't draft this kid. I mean, they just signed him as a flyer. There's no downside, Dave. There's no, like you said, if it doesn't go wrong, then you have a $13,333.33 cap hit, dead money, I think. Who cares? It's definitely worth the risk. What do you have to lose?
I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I mean, he's going to be.
I can already tell you, when I put out my list of players to watch at training camp, he'll be on the list.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, and you probably can't wait just to talk to him.
I know. I haven't even met the guy yet.
So this is really funny. So when the Eagles signed him, you weren't around, so I jumped on that story. And then he ran in the Penn relays, and I was like, I'll write it. And then he talked to Clark, and I was like, I'll write it. And it was my master plan, just to annoy you. I was going to try to write every Devon Allen story for forever. And then I was on the beach. And I honestly wouldn't have cared as much as you did. So I'm glad that you wrote it this weekend. Well,
it takes a lot less than writing about Devon Allen for you to annoy me. But yeah, it was a fun story. It was a hell of a race. I mean, whether he's an Eagle or not, whether he ever played football or not, seeing this dude, 27 years old, PR like that by 15/100ths of a second is a lot. He had a great quote. The last thing on Devon Allen, he had a great quote about the world record. He missed the world record by 4/100ths of a second. And he said, that's how close I am. I'm 4,000ths of a second per hurdle off the world record. So in his mind, it's like he's got to run 4,000ths of a second faster per hurdle, and he's got the world record. That's not very much.
Thousandths is a tough word to say.
Thousandths.
That's my elementary school speech teachers probably just telling me to stay away from that one completely. That has a bunch of that's Mr. Softy.
Oh yeah.
That wasn't my elementary speech teacher. I did something fun. I went through the Eagles position groups and I ranked them from strongest to weakest. And you haven't seen this list.
I've not seen the list.
So I'm just going to go through it, and I want to get your take on if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, how you would change things up. You want to go from weakest to strongest?
Let's go weakest to strongest.
Okay, so we'll start off, and I put them into 12 categories. I split up the offensive line into interior and tackles. I split up the defensive line into defensive tackles and overhang players. So let's just go from there.
What about safeties and corners separate?
Safeties and corners are separate.
Okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. So at number 12, I have safety. I think they might be able to get by with Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps, but the depth isn't very good. And that was a position where they clearly wanted to upgrade this offseason, and they didn't. They didn't get Marcus Williams. They didn't get Justin Reed. They didn't get Tyrann Mathieu. And look, there's still time to add talent there. But right now, Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps doesn't do much for me.
Yeah, I think Epps will be okay. Okay. I'm not a big fan of Anthony Harris. I didn't see anything from him. Surprised they brought him back. But obviously, Gannon has a comfort level with him. He wasn't a disaster. I mean, he can go out there and not kill you. But yeah, I would think that's a fair number 12.
Yeah. At 11, I put the specialists.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Jake Elliott had coming off a career year. Rick Lovato, he's the long snapper. I don't have much there. He's pretty solid. Aaron Sipas struggled last year, and it's a spot where I thought they needed to upgrade, and they just didn't. And
they still might.
They still might, but we talked about how they have a 90-man roster. You have plenty of room to bring in some competition for them. They haven't done it. And then I also extended it to the return men. I mean, Jalen Rager's probably still the punt returner. Kenny Gainwell's probably the kick returner. He was okay.
Devon Allen, baby, kick returner.
Yeah, Devon Allen or Bryn Covey. I mean, if one of those guys can make the team, but they're long shots to make the team, both of them. So I think specialist has to be pretty low on the list.
Yeah, I totally agree. As good as Jake Elliott was last year. Also, you never know which Jake Elliott you're going to get year to year. But he was very good last year. The year before, he was terrible. So Lovato, you don't really notice. So I guess he's good. But yeah, I think those last two are definitely the last two. I might even switch the order.
Oh, you put specialist.
I might put specialist last because punting is such. I mean, that's field position. I mean, that's so many yards. Like he was the worst punter in the league over the last. I think it was 6 or 7 weeks by 2.5 yards per punt.
Yeah.
So you just put your team in such a hole when you're that bad. And field position killed this team last year, and I just can't. I can't believe that they're considering going into another season with him.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. At number 10, I have running back, and
Really?
I do, and it doing this exercise kind of tells you like this roster's pretty good because I don't think running back's necessarily like some big weakness, but I look at Miles Sanders, who was very good last year, but struggled to stay healthy again. He's missed 9 games over the last 2 years. Behind him, they have Boston Scott, who's a solid player. They have Kenny Gainwell, who I think is going to have a bigger role, but they're missing that other running back, I think, like the kind of a bruiser. I don't know if you need it, but they're missing that. They had it in Jordan Howard last year. So, it's pretty low for running back, I guess, because Miles is good, but can't stay healthy, and that worries me.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'd have to look at the whole group when we're done, but I think they have some really talented guys. I think Gainwell and Boston Scott are really good backups. They both get into the end zone. Gainwell, I think, sky's the limit for him. Be interesting to see where he goes from here. I think he's going to play a lot more this coming year. Maybe not a lot more, but significantly more. I've always been a big Boston Scott fan. For the number of touches he gets, his production is crazy. But Miles Sanders is a starter, and he does have injury problems, so it's fair to. And we'll talk about him more in a bit, but that does seem low to me. But think about the other positions, it might be where they belong.
Yeah. So at 9, I have quarterback, and I almost thought about just leaving quarterback off because I don't want to make this all about Jalen Hurts. But I look at Jalen Hurts, and I think he's an average NFL quarterback right now. I think he's middle of the pack. If you were to, he's kind of the median, right? I think he's right in that 15, 16, 17 range. And it helps having Gardner Minshew as the backup because he's a pretty good backup, but I don't think it matters as much at that position if the backup's great, because if everything goes to plan, he's not going to play.
Yeah, and I like Jalen, and I think he's got a shot to be the guy long term, but I would put running backs ahead of quarterbacks.
Okay.
I
flipped those back and forth a few times.
Yeah, And it's not a knock on him. It's just, you're valuing what he's done, and he's done some good things and he's done some bad things until, like we know Miles Sanders. The question is his health. I mean, I think he's got like the third highest rushing average of any running back in history. I mean, when you just running backs, obviously a lot of quarterbacks are higher, but the production is there. He just needs to stay healthy with the quarterback.
Missed so much time though.
Oh, I agree. And I think it's a fair question, but I also think he's got two pretty good backups. So I would put quarterback 10th and running backs 9th.
Okay. At 8, I have the edge players. And this is kind of a weird one because they have Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat in this group. And both of those are like really good players. But I thought this was an area, especially at the defensive end spot, they needed to add. And they didn't. They brought back Derek Barnett, who's, again, an average player. They're relying on Brandon Graham, who we love, but we're not sure exactly what he's going to offer. And they waited until the 6th round to address an edge player in general when they drafted Kyron Johnson. So it's pretty low. And it was tough because you look at the top and you go, Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat are two really good players. They're two of the better players on that defense. But after that,
you like Josh Sweat more than I do. I mean, I think he's okay.
He's a good player.
He's an okay player.
He's better than okay. Okay is average. He's above average.
I think I guess he's a little above average. I don't know. You like him more than I do.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's a pretty good player.
I mean, there's a lot of question marks at that position. You're right. And I think the fact that they got Reddick kind of brings it up.
And that's a big addition. I don't want to understate
but
that.
There's question marks about everybody on that at that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So then at 7, I have tight end, and Dallas Goedert is a stud. He's a top 5 tight end in the league. He's probably only getting better this year now that he's the guy. But after him, you have Jack Stoll, who caught 4 passes last year, and Grant Calcaterra, who's a rookie 6th round pick. So, last year at this time last year, they had Ertz and Goddard, overall a better position group. But in the current setup, it allows Goddard to really be the guy.
Yeah, and I think Stoll, you got to give Stoll credit for his blocking. He is a really good blocker. He was playing a ton of reps by the end of the year. But, yeah, I think to really bring that grade up, that position grade up, he's got to – one of those guys, whether it's him or anybody, Calcaterra, anybody's got to be a receiver as well. It doesn't mean you have to catch 50 passes, but, 20 would be nice. So yeah. I think that's fair.
At 6, I have off-ball linebacker, and this includes T.J. Edwards, Kaiser White, Nakobe Dean, Davion Taylor, Sean Bradley. Those 5, it's really solid. It could be higher than 6. It's just I don't know.
You're just so conditioned to. I can't rank Eagle linebackers higher than 6.
Well, I look at and we'll get to the positions ahead of it. I could make the case, but the fact that they're that deep and they're still 6 on this list is just another indication of how good this roster is on paper.
Yeah, they've improved so much. Probably I would think the most improved position group. We talk so much about, the new guys. I mean, but I think T.J. Edwards is a good player, and he's going to have a role in this defense. And
I even think like Davion Taylor is kind of a forgotten guy. He showed good flashes.
I have a story on him on the site today.
Yeah, it was good. I think he showed something last year. He's at least a decent backup. And Sean Bradley's never really gotten a chance to play. But of all the players who haven't gotten a chance to play, I'm oddly confident that he could acquit himself quite well.
Well, I mean, he's smart and he can run. You can see it on special teams. Mm-hmm. Hopefully he doesn't get a shot because that would mean somebody's hurt. But I think Dean's the only question mark just because because he hasn't played on this level. Look, I think he's going to be really good. But right now it's a projection, and until he proves he can hold up at that size, we'll see if he gets a little bigger. It's still a question mark, but I mean, I don't know the last time they had this linebackers like this. I mean, you have to go back to Mike Reichenbach and Seth Joyner and Byron Evans, and who else was on that team? What are the linebackers they have? You weren't born yet.
You might be asking me.
But yeah, it's been a long time.
Thank you, everyone, by the way, for the nice words about the Nakobe Dean feature. That was cool.
I hooked you up on the page views, by the way.
I appreciate it.
I tweeted it out. My tweet you got over 1,100 page views just from me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Checks in the mail.
No, I want like some page views from you.
I tweet. F5, interior offensive line. And I guess there's kind of a question mark here at right guard, but I'm of the belief that Isaac Seumalo has been pretty solid there.
But here's the thing: if you hold it against Miles Sanders that he's always hurt, you have to hold it against Isaac.
Yeah, and I do. But the difference here is you have 3 interior offensive linemen. One of them is an All-Pro. The other one is a improving second-round pick who's got Pro Bowl potential. And I think the depth at interior offensive line is pretty good when you look at a second-round pick and Cam Jurgens, Sua Opeta, who's been here a few years, and Jack Driscoll can play inside.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I just, I wonder if Isaac can hold up. I mean, I think that's gonna. And anybody who's had that kind of injury history, you just wonder if they're going to hold up. But you're right. I mean, I think Sua could handle it. Right guard, quite capably. Driscoll is another guy who's had a bunch of injuries, but yeah, now what number is that? 5?
5.
Yeah.
And because now, like, Kelsey's obviously such an important player. And look, it would be a projection with Cam Jurgens, but they used a valuable resource to get him a backup and a replacement at some point. So the depth is strong.
Yeah. I mean, if Isaac's healthy, 5 might even be a little low.
Yeah.
What else you got? Who's 4?
4. Guess.
I
know you love
defensive
guessing.
Tackle.
No. 4 is receiver.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is such an improved group. You have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are your top 2. Quez Watkins is 3. Zach Pascal's 4. Jalen Reagor, who was your 2 at this time last year, is now your 5. So it's
Devon Allen's your 5.
It's Rager's your 5.
Greg Ward's your 5.
But how improved is that group?
Yeah, and on top of the additions, I just think Devontae Smith's going to be improved.
Yeah,
and Quez should be better too. He was still in the project category last year. He barely played as a rookie, so it's exciting. I mean, there's two position groups, linebacker and receiver, that I don't know if we had done this for the last 10 years every year. Either one would ever be in the top half of this kind of ranking.
Yeah, you're right.
And here they are, 4 and 6.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, 2 positions they've really struggled at, and another position they've really struggled at. I have a number 3, cornerback. Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, we have to see Bradbury do it. Didn't play quite as well last year, but played better than people realize.
And it's still, I mean, the level he played last year was still higher than Steve Nelson, who played pretty well.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. I mean, it's amazing how Bradbury just fell in their laps. I mean, because of the Giants' incompetence in managing their cap, the Eagles got themselves a starting cornerback. And I just think, having 2 guys at that level just allows you to do so much more. And, there's again is going to have that luxury of either keeping a guy on the side or matching up if, depending on the matchups and what he thinks is the best way to go. But I mean, how many times did we see a number 2 receiver, put up good numbers against the Eagles when you have a number 1 corner and they never throw his way? So can't do that anymore. And, we don't talk about Avonte Maddox enough, but he's really, really good in the slot.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch him play again this year. You're right. He's kind of gotten overshadowed by the Bradbury edition, but Maddox played so well last year. So well. Earned himself a lot of money because of it.
Yeah. I always worry, he's so physical at his size, but he seems to, he gets banged up here and there. Everybody does, but seems to be able to hold up. What do you think about the cornerback depth?
A lot of potential. It's still a numbers game with that. You have, Zach McPherson and Josiah Scott, Kerry Vincent, Mac McCain, Jimmy Moreland. They have all these guys. It just, like, they're all kind of talented. Just the numbers tell me one of them is going to be okay.
Yeah. McPherson, I think, probably has the best chance, just as a guy that came up here, drafted here. Carrie Vincent still has a better 100-meter dash time than Devon Allen, by the way, by 4/100ths of a second.
If they were to race, who do you think would win?
Well, the thing is, Carrie Vincent hasn't run since 2019. He was a hell of a sprinter for LSU. He was on two relay teams, 4x1 and 4x2, that were ranked in the top 20 in the world. And he ran 10:07 and 20, I forget his 200 time, 20:24 or something. Those are legit times. So Devon Allen's a great hurdler. He's not quite that fast as a sprinter. I think his PR's 10:12 or 10:13. I think it's 10:13. So they're right in the same. So I think Carrie Vincent, with some training, would give him a really good race.
You ever ask a question and then immediately regret it?
I was wondering about that.
All right. Number 2, defensive tackle. And yeah, Fletcher Cox, look, he's not what he used to be. He's not this same dominant force, but he kind of reminds me of Jason Peters in a way where he set the bar so high for so many years,
right,
that when he doesn't play up to that level anymore, people think he stinks, which just isn't true. He's still a very good defensive tackle. You could argue still a top 10 to 15.
I don't think he's top 10.
Maybe not, but I'm saying in that 10 to 15 range. And that's still a really good player. And when you have him, Javon Hargrave, now Jordan Davis, and Milton Williams, that is a heck of a 4-man rotation.
Yeah, I think Fletcher could go either way this year. It's his second year in the scheme. I think that'll help him. It'll be interesting to see how. I mean, he always works hard during the offseason. He keeps himself in shape. But I mean, he has declined a little bit more each of the last few years. So maybe that'll continue, and he won't be in that 10 to 15 range. But maybe he'll feel rejuvenated.
And you can argue, by the way, the Eagles shouldn't have paid him $14 million for this year. I think that's a very fair argument because they're still paying him like a top 10 guy when he probably isn't. But I didn't want to make this about the possible misuse of or the allocation of cap room. This is about the players that they have.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was just let's just bring him back, and I think there's value in that for the locker room, and even if he's not a $14 million player, he's an all-time Eagle. Let's try to keep him for another year. Yeah. I think that had a lot to do with it. But it'll be interesting to see what they get from him. Maybe the fact that his relationship with Gannon has improved, there's open lines of communication, will help him be a more productive player. He knows what Gannon's looking for. Gannon knows what he likes to do, so maybe that'll help. But yeah, it's a loaded group.
Yeah, it is. And I really think 2 to 4 here you could have in any order. I had defensive tackle, cornerback, receiver. You could have receiver, defensive tackle, cornerback. You could. I really think those 3, for me, are pretty interchangeable. How would you have those 3?
I'll tell you what. I might have wide receiver first.
So you'd have wide receiver 2, then defensive tackle or cornerback.
Probably defensive tackle just because of the depth.
Okay, and then corner.
Yeah.
So we're not too far off. You'd have receiver higher than me. But for me, I think number 1 is offensive tackle. And I guess you can question if Lane can stay healthy, but they have 2 Pro Bowl caliber tackles, and it's rare to have 2 bookends like this. The Eagles have been blessed in their recent history to have really good tackles, but Mailata and Lane are about as good as it gets in the NFL.
Yeah, they are. We were so lucky to have Trey and Runyon for 10 years, and now you have. They were about the same age. Obviously Lane's a little older than Mailata, a lot older than Mailata, so they won't have as long a run together. But when they're both on the field, man, they're just both bulldozers. They're so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
And the old timers who listen and watch the podcast know how offensive tackle was a nightmare here for 20 years. Just couldn't find one good one, much less 2. So it's and that all changed with Trey in '98, drafted in the first round. and they've been solid there ever since.
Yeah. I think Lane is underrated in the grand scheme of things. I think people forget how good he is. He's very good.
He is.
He is very good.
He is. And then maybe the fact that he plays right, maybe the fact that Mulata has been such a, wonder kind, it might have something to do with that. But Lane Johnson, I mean, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler for a reason.
Yeah. And I mean, every year that he hasn't been one, he could have been one.
That's true.
Maybe should have been one, honestly. Yeah. Okay, so that's the list. Any egregious errors that you saw?
No, I mean, I'd probably flip a couple of those things. I'd probably have running back a little higher, might have receiver a little higher. But other than that, right.
Yeah.
Right about what I would do.
It's a fun exercise. And I'm also, for later in the summer, I'm working on the 25 most important players for this season. And these two exercises have been really eye-opening to me in just realizing how good this roster is, at least on paper. They have to do it, but I did these types of things this time last year, and it's a much better team. It's much better.
Yeah, it's like I did that top 10 players under 25 last year, and like Mac Collins was like number 3 or something. That wasn't Mac Collins, but and then I did it this year, and there's like really good players that didn't even make the cut. So yeah, all those things just kind of really emphasize, what a good job Howie's done putting this thing together. And I mean, there's no excuses now,
Yeah,
go win some games.
All right. You mentioned it. You teased a little bit ago, Miles Sanders, because he's such a unique player because he has so much talent, and his entire 3 years here, I feel like we've been teased with that talent in a way.
Yeah, I mean, his rookie year, he didn't get hurt, and the production was amazing. I mean, including it was an unbelievable receiver, and we haven't seen that since then.
But the weird thing was he started that year, and he wasn't a great runner. He was like not finding his holes. He was dancing too much, but he had this receiving ability. And all right, well, you kind of pivot that way, and you make him a receiver a little bit more. And then the last couple of years, it's gone the other way.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a fluke that first year as far as the receiving went. He's definitely grown as a runner. I thought last year he ran more decisively than he ever has. I mean, the production is you just can't argue with the production. I know he didn't have any touchdowns last year. I don't care. I couldn't care less about that. You have a quarterback that scored 10 of them. And then you have a guy like Boston who's such a good red zone runner and deep red zone runner. I think he had 5 rushing touchdowns, and Gainwell had a bunch too. Mainly receiving, but I don't really care about that. I just care about him staying healthy, and I just don't know. Now he's in a contract year, so that's why this is such an interesting conversation, because they have no commitment to him beyond this year. And I would think if he gets hurt in training camp, or I would think they'd like to sign him to some kind of deal. And I'm sure he'd like to do that, but if he gets hurt again, or if he doesn't look quite right, you're not going to do that. So it's a big preseason for him. You look at the timing that they signed all those guys last year, and those guys all drafted, a year ahead of Miles in 18, Goddard and Maddox and Mulata and Sweat. They all signed like late in camp or early in the season. Once they're like, all right, this is our guy. So I would assume they would do the same thing if they feel that strongly about Miles. Running back salaries are low, and with these injuries, he's really in a position where he can ask for a whole lot of money.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you. I think that's the way they're going to handle this, and they're going to try to sign it to an extension. But there is the idea here that it's not even worth it to sign a running back to an extension. I wanted to get your take on that, because look, I agree with that. I don't think it'll be like some exorbitant amount of money, but it's going to be more significant than what he's getting paid now. Would you do it? I mean, would you pay him whatever it's going to take to extend him? And I know that's kind of a tough question to answer without knowing what the figures would be, versus, draft the guy next year and just plug and play. There's more risk involved, but you can save money that way too.
Yeah, I think I certainly wouldn't make him a top 10 paid, 20th highest paid running back. And I just think the talent is rare. And running backs don't get a lot. They don't make a lot of money anyway. So, you could probably, and I mean, he's taking a risk if he tries to hit the open market. Like, where's he going to go? What kind of offense do they run? Starting over again, and will he even get that kind of money on the open market that he would get if he signs a fairly cheap deal here? So I think they can get him pretty cheap.
Do you? I mean, so I'm looking at the contracts, running back contracts, AVY on over the cap. So if he were to the 10th highest paid running back in the league, there's a couple of them, James Conner and Leonard Fournette, both making $7 million a year.
Yep. Now, who's 20th?
I'm not going to do the math here.
How many are over $4 million a year?
I ballpark it like 16.
Yeah.
They don't have the numbers on
I think that's the place for him. I think like $3.5 million a year. And
so $3.5 million per year would put him above Jamal Williams, Travis Etienne, who's on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
I think he might make more than that.
Maybe. People are going to see the same thing that the Eagles see, that he can't stay healthy and can't stay on the field. And running backs, short shelf life. I think there's a positive. He didn't have a ton of, he didn't have a huge workload at Penn State. He hasn't had a huge workload these 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Had a couple of games, I think, his rookie year. I think Doug gave him, how many times has he carried for 20 times? Like, I think twice, 3 times in his career.
Yeah, not many.
So I think there's that. I think he's probably got a longer shelf life than some guys. Some guys going into their 4th year. I wouldn't go over $4 million for him.
So I'm looking at like Chris Carson, signed before the 21 season, signed a 2-year, $10.4 million contract. Is it crazy to think that's the area Miles will be in?
Maybe. I wouldn't go that high, I don't think.
Yeah. That's the tricky thing. I don't know. You start to wonder what's the number. It's so many positions, it's easy to figure out. All right, this is the number you need to get to. Like, it was funny when Howie talked about the AJ Brown deal and how tough it was. I felt like I could have come up with that deal.
Well, you can pack it with incentives with running backs. I mean, you can base it on, the number of games that he dresses out for, and don't even make it about, the performance. Just, is he healthy or not? Because that's the question with him. So, my hunch is that he'll be here. My hunch is that he knows his value is not extraordinarily high right now. So, we'll see. If he could ever put it together for a full season and be healthy, I mean, you're looking at a, I don't know if Pro Bowl caliber guy, but if he gets the receiving part of the game back, you're looking at a pretty good player.
Yeah, at least 1,000-yard rusher.
Oh yeah, I mean, easy. That's like 50 some odd yards now. So.
Yeah, you're right. The 17th game really screws with my head a little bit.
Yeah. What's your gut? Is he going to be here or no next year? I
think he will be. Yeah, I think it might cost a little bit more than you, though.
You could always do the 1-year thing and, a prove-it deal. He could bet on himself.
It's interesting. If that happens, I wonder if it wouldn't happen until he's a free agent. Like, it feels like if they're going to sign him during the year, it's probably going to be a multi-year extension.
I think that's definitely true. Yeah.
I don't know what multi-year means for running back. It's not going to be like a
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably right.
Yeah. So, but it's certainly interesting, and I like him more than a lot of people. I know a lot of fans are really down on him. I get that. I mean, you got to be available.
Does the success that other running backs have had here during his time, you look at Boston, you look at Jordan Howard, now you look at Kenny Gainwell, to, I guess, a lesser extent, it's been more receiving. Does that change your opinion of Miles?
That's a fair question. I mean, they have this incredible offensive line. Maybe Jason Huntley could average 4.5 yards behind that line. It's a fair question. I happen to think Miles is really talented and would be able to produce, again, behind most O lines, but certainly a fair question. And, you could do it like the Patriots and just bring in a new 5th round pick every year, get a couple of years out of him, give him 300 carries, and then move on.
Yeah, it's not a crazy.
Never spend for a running back.
Yeah, it's not a crazy way to operate, honestly.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to do something a little fun here. because I love undrafted rookies. Let's just each pick one that we really are excited to watch at training camp. Do you have one at the front of your mind?
I'm allowed to say Devon Allen.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like, I don't think he's going to suck. I don't think he's going to go out there and just not be able to run a pad or not be able to catch a pass. Because, when you look at his fitness level and then you look at the way they run training camp, they're not tackling to the ground. So I think he's going to have a real chance to, shine, I think, and look good. Now, whether that's enough to make the team, I kind of doubt it, but I don't know. I can't really think of an undrafted, and he's technically a rookie. He's never been in a training camp.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a guy, an undrafted rookie, that there's going to be this much hype about ever. I mean,
especially if he wins Worlds.
Yeah.
Which isn't crazy.
No, I think he will. And it's the first time the World Championship has been in the U.S. in a long, long time.
And it's in Eugene.
Where
it's like his backyard.
Yeah, he runs great on that. That's where the Nationals are too in a couple weeks. I can't wait to see him. Honestly, I don't want to get carried away with the hype. I still think it's a long shot, but it's gonna be fun as hell watching him.
Yeah, I'm along those same lines. I want to see Britton Covey.
Yeah,
I do, and I'm a little skeptical because he's so small. He really is. He's tiny. And he was getting thrown around at OTAs and they weren't even hitting yet. But we'll learn a lot when the pads come on. And if the Eagles were to keep a sixth receiver, it's probably going to need to be someone who can contribute on special teams. And he was a dynamic returner at Utah. And he's another older rookie. We just picked the two oldest rookies on the team.
Yeah.
Britton is 25. Devon Allen is 27. But I found it interesting that Dallas Goedert brought up Britton Covey when asked about which rookies stood out the most.
Yeah.
And when Nick Sirianni was talking about the receiver group, he mentioned Covey on his own. So I think there's something there. And he might be a practice squad guy too, but his ability as a returner and the fact that he played football since 2014.
You see Ryan Moats when you look at him? Let's see a little Ryan Moats.
I could now. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I mean, because we're picking guys. We're not going to pick guards. They're going to be, I can't wait to see this.
I did think about Noah Ellis, the big nose tackle, because he was hurt at OTAs and he didn't practice.
Yeah. He's got a famous father. So
yeah,
that's interesting. But undrafted rookie receivers are always like training camp darlings. So we picked a couple of them.
Yeah. Fair enough. The last thing on our little list here is vacation, because there will be podcasts all summer. We're planning ahead here, and you're going to have something to listen to every week. But we're also
might not be very good, but you'll have something.
Well, that's true for
for
every podcast. Yeah. But it's fun because this is the only time in the NFL schedule where there's any downtime, really. It used to be you'd have 2 times a year the last, couple decades. You'd have after February and you'd have now. But that after February time has kind of been shrinking because the season keeps going later and later. So now it's like you have this time. It's once minicamp ends, and until the Eagles have been nice because they chopped off their minicamp to give us some extra time. But this is it. This is the only dead time in the NFL.
Yeah, and the bye week, but yeah, it's and I think the thing about the period between January and the spring, the NFL has done a great job. Like I think pro days are bigger than they've ever been. The lead up to the combine, all that stuff is kind of magnified, and so that whole period between the end of the season and the draft is all kind of like, that's like high intensity, high leverage time for us. But we got a little 6 week downtime.
This is the time of year I'm always like, please no one get in trouble. Please no one get in trouble.
Yeah.
Someone always gets in trouble.
Not always.
A lot of times someone gets in trouble or something stupid happens. Or
Dave, did you see what happened with Josh Huff?
Yeah. So you brought up the idea of just talking about vacations. I have one planned this summer. I'm headed to Washington State to go into the wilderness for a little bit. It's my favorite thing to do because my phone won't work. But you said, are there any vacation spots that you'd want to go to that you haven't been? So I'll start with you. Are there vacation spots you've never been that you think you'd like to go one day?
Yeah, you know what? I would love to explore Canada. I've been to like Montreal a couple times and Vancouver once, but I've never really seen Canada. And they have a train ride across Canada. I would love to take that. It's like 8 days, and it goes to some villages that aren't accessible by road. So little mountain villages, and you know, you can spend the night. You can actually spend a couple of days. I think the train runs 3 times a week each way. I'm not sure I'd be able to do both ways. I'd probably fly home. But I think it goes from like Toronto to Vancouver, something like that.
You're a big train guy.
Big train guy. And yeah, so I think that would be amazing, taking that train. And it costs like $12,000. So like, it's not like getting on, you know, SEPTA, like getting on the R4 to, you know, Media Elwyn, but that's a dream. That's a dream vacation of mine, is taking that train across the country and across Canada and just seeing that country. And then like getting off the train, like, you know how you take the trolley around Philly, like to the art museum and everything, you can get on and off as many times as you want.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. I would get off, spend a couple of days in some of the villages. And
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some beauty up there. I've always wanted to go to like Jasper and Banff National Parks.
Yeah. How much have you spent up in Canada? How much time?
Not a ton. A little bit in British Columbia. I've spent some time in Toronto. I actually screwed up on one trip. I had a layover in Toronto, and I thought I had a 2-hour layover. I had a 26-hour layover. I was flying back from Asia, and I had my times were all wacky in my head, and I realized it on my flight into Toronto, and I couldn't just ask the flight attendant, like, what day is it? You know, have me arrested. But I figured it out on the flight that I was landing a day earlier than I was supposed to in my head.
What did you do? Did you stay in the airport?
No, God, no. I got a hotel room and checked in, like, and then my flight wasn't until like the next evening.
Oh, okay.
So I went to, like, I got some food, I went to sleep, and I just been like, I was like, I needed to shower and like sleep in a bed because I'd been in the jungle for a while. So, yeah. So
is that when you brought all the Quick Slants t-shirts to, or what?
No. That was, I was in Uganda, and I brought 700 level show t-shirts.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the next day they have a train that goes from the airport, and I stayed up by the airport to downtown. So I went to the Hockey Hall of Fame. I went up in the CN Tower. It was fun. I made a day of it.
That's cool.
Yeah. For me though, so the trip at the forefront of my mind, and I was starting to plan it for this summer, but it was a little tricky still with COVID restrictions. Galapagos. I want to go to the Galapagos, and I'm not going to do a cruise because it's really expensive, and I'm not really a cruise person. I know that's kind of a different cruise. It's not like that's not like a typical cruise. You're like getting off and doing stuff, but I'm going to organize a trip on my own and kind of get there and figure it out. Because they say like you can pick all these day trips and they're cheaper if you just get there and do it. It takes a little guts to do that and not have everything planned, but I'm thinking maybe next summer I'll try to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be on a train going across Canada while you're there.
Yeah. That was fun. I like that. I could talk about that. I have a lot in my head that I want to do.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye Podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Next time you're in traffic, get out, get yourself an ice cream cone for Rube. I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon.